Moving on, lesson 4. Now we're going to see how we're going to learn the various concepts that were introduced in a very brief way in lesson 3. The first declension. Latin nouns and adjectives which have a final "a" in the nominative singular form, the first declension. They are sometimes called "a" stems or "a" stems because "a" is the character or final letter of the stem. This character is seen before the ending "-rum" in the genitive plural. Again, we're not going to spend time worrying about stems and what he calls here the character and whatnot. We're simply going to learn these endings. And at this point we should say, especially in these first few months of your learning Latin, memorizing these endings is everything. Memorizing the endings, learning how to form the words, and learning the vocabulary is absolutely essential. And so you'll see on page 12 you have an instruction there. For all paradigms, make 2 sets of flashcards, whole word and termination only. So what I want you to do is to make a set of flashcards like this. First declension nouns, and you see down the edge I have N for nominative, G for genitive, D for dative, AC for accusative, and AB for ablative. And then put down the endings. A, I, a, I, arum, is, as, is. So let's say those together. A, I, a, I, arum, is, as, is. And then on the other side, go ahead and write the whole thing with a noun, so you can see how they go together. Silva, silvae, silvae, silvam, silva, silvae, silvarum, silvis, silvas, silvis. Right. So you need to do that for every form that we have, and you've just got to study these flashcards until you can say them when somebody comes into your room and wakes you out of a dead sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning. They've just got to roll out of your tongue. They've got to be foremost in your mind. I cannot stress enough. You've got to learn these endings, memorize them, be able to say them out loud, and be able to write them down correctly. So make your flashcards. Let's say them again. A, I, a. Well, my students went to the plural. Let's do the singular, then the plural. Together. A, I, a. I, arum, is, as, is. Very good. Now look at his translations there. Silva is a forest. And you would use the nominative to simply show it as the subject of the sentence. I'm trying to think of a good adjective to go with forest. To say the forest is deep or long, right? Silva longa est, right? So when silva, the forest, is the subject of the sentence, use nominative. So the forest is long, the forest is dark, the forest is green. That's going to be nominative. Silvae, of a forest. So the deer of the forest, the trees of the forest. Arbores silvae, the trees of the forest. At this point we should also point out Latin has neither the word a nor the word the. So arbores silvae can mean the trees of the forest, the trees of a forest. Okay, there's no word a and no word the in Latin. You just have to bring that into your English translation based on the context. The dative, silvae, to a forest, for a forest. So the farmer cut the weeds for the sake of the forest, right? The farmer mowed the grass for the forest. Silvam, a forest. The soldiers burned the forest, would be silvam, when the accusative takes the action of the verb. So the soldiers cut down the forest would be in the accusative. The ablative, silva, with a forest, by a forest, from a forest. The soldiers ran out from the forest would be in the ablative. And then again in the plural, silvae, silvarum, silvis, silvas, silvis. Okay, so plural as the subject, silvae, nominative plural. The forests were burning. Genitive, silvarum, the deer of the forests of northern Europe. Dative, silvis, to the forest or for the forest. They sent cattle to the forest. Well, that's a little different. That's motion. It's hard to think of something that you do, that you give to a forest. They gave presents to the forest. It doesn't really make sense, but there you go. Accusative, the soldiers burnt the forests of northern Europe. Ablative, silvis, the soldiers came out from the forest. All right. On the case forms. The vocative of this declension has the same form as the nominative, as in Puella, oh girl. So, oh girl, get off the jungle gym bars, would be the vocative. The vocative is not very much used. It's used obviously in direct address, and that's about it. So it's pretty easy to tell when it's being used, and it always pretty much looks like the nominative. So you'll notice that's not in your chart to learn. When we make the charts, we use just 5 cases: nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative. We always use them in that order: nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative. All right, page 13. The locative, or case of place where, in names of towns only, has a singular form which ends in I, like the genitive, but it has no plural, as in Romae means at Rome. Again, this is something we're not going to learn the locative when we make our charts. It's a very specialized use when it comes to, as he says here, when it comes to where you live or where you're going and so forth. Vocabulary. All right. You got a little instruction box there. Make flashcards for vocabulary words here. And in Wheelock, Caput Unum, Chapter 1, page 6. So we're using Wheelock to supplement what we're doing in first year Latin, and we're going to get a lot of vocabulary from Wheelock. So you need to make flashcards for the vocabulary in both books, both in first year Latin and in Wheelock's Latin, Chapter 1. And you can make flashcards with just one word on each card, but then your stack of cards gets very large indeed. So what I recommend is that you use a 3x5 note card like this, and you can get 18 or 20 words on a card, and so you have the Latin on one side and the English on the other. And again, you simply have to practice, 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 get out, make your cards, and then get out your cards and practice them until it is absolutely second nature. And so let's do the pronunciation here on this vocabulary on page 13. Femina, mensa, pecunia, puella, rosa, stella. All right, and then in Wheelock, page 6, go through this vocabulary as well. May, quid, nihil, non, saipa, si, amo. And in Wheelock, he's going to give you all the principal parts. So he gives you amo, amare, amavi, amatum. Those are certainly good to put on your vocabulary cards. But of course, amo means I love. And so amare means to love, amavi means I have loved, and amatum means loved. So right now, you don't need to worry about the meaning of all those things. Just learn that the first one is amo, that means I love. Cogito, repeat. Cogitare, cogitavi, cogitatum. So if you're going to make a vocabulary line for that, for now, just put cogito, and it means I think. Debeo, do, ero, laudo, maneo, salvio, servo, conservo, terreo, valeo, video, voco. Okay, so there is our vocabulary. And this also, by the way, this lesson completes our first week. So what to do before next week? At the end of every 2 weeks, we have a quiz. And so what's going to be on that quiz? All these vocabulary words, all the endings that we learned here in the first declension, and also, of course, the information that we're going to do in week 2. But this week, really focus on being able to learn those endings so that you can just say I, is, as, is, so that you just know all the vocabulary words and what they mean. That's in these early months of Latin, the #1 priority is get these things memorized, learn what they mean. We'll start putting them together and explaining more of the grammatical concepts as we go through. So we did a lot of these grammatical concepts today. If you're still a little fuzzy right now about what's a nominative, what's a genitive, what's a dative, what's an accusative, what's an ablative, don't worry about it. We're going to get to each of these as we move into more complicated chapters and explain them and re-explain them. For now, memorize your endings, memorize your vocabulary, and you'll be good to go to begin Lesson 5 next week.